Step into the shadows of the past, where simple radio waves became a deadly weapon. A single whisper in a dark Beirut bunker traveled through the air, passing the massive armies. This invisible transmission was no simple broadcast. It was a tactical, military command. It sparked a massive chain reaction across the Middle East, altering the landscape forever. How did these underground broadcasters outsmart agencies to build an unseen and formidable empire? In the early 80s, physical warfare reached a deadly stalemate across the fractured region. A fearsome new weapon was forged in the deep darkness. It was built of invisible frequencies. Words were no longer just tools for propaganda. They became a direct instrument of command. Deep underground, men sat sweating in tiny secret rooms, surrounded by glowing metal dials and wires. They were the new generals of a modern war, broadcasting orders through the very dense urban fog. With every turn of a rusty metal dial, they shifted the balance of power in the city. The crackle of static noise carried hidden meanings, reaching fighters across the ruined landscape. According to secret military archives, these hidden stations operated outside the law. They bypassed government censorship entirely, delivering raw, tactical data to the lines. A simple phrase spoken into a microphone could launch a coordinated ambush miles away. These underground networks grew rapidly in the dark. They transformed scattered rebels into a joint force. Enemy forces were baffled by the sudden, fierce agility of the resistance fighters. Unseen commanders guided their troops through a terrible maze of shattered buildings and broken asphalt. The radio became a vital lifeline then, connecting isolated units in the bitter dark. Messages were often cloaked in poetry or religious verses to confuse the enemies. A broadcast about the weather could secretly signal the start of a massive and deadly night assault. This method of communication left no trace or physical paper trail for anyone to find. Historians note that this was the dawn of a new era in asymmetrical warfare tactics. The voice of a single man in a basement held more power than an entire armored tank battalion. As the conflict in Lebanon intensified, the reliance on these secret frequencies increased. Transmitters were hidden inside civilian homes, avoiding devastating aerial bombardments. Every citizen with a cheap receiver suddenly became a potential informant. A nation divided by concrete barricades was now united by invisible silver threads. Those threads carried warnings of incoming airstrikes and movements of hostile infantry troops on the ground. They created a dynamic defense system that adapted faster than any other army. Even when the main power grids completely failed, battery-operated radios kept war alive. The volume of transmissions grew so dense that the airwaves themselves became a fearsome battleground. The invisible spark had ignited at last. The underground network was ready to expand farther. The system then evolved into a highly complex, borderless web of secret communications. Rebel leaders realized that territory meant nothing if they fully controlled the unseen airwaves. Mobile broadcast units were mounted on large trucks, constantly moving to evade deadly detection. This was the birth of a unique guerrilla tactic. Strike hard, then vanish into the shadows unseen. Fighters on the ground eagerly awaited orders through handheld devices clutched in dirty, weary hands. They listened intently in the dark, filtering out the deafening sound of artillery explosions. Frequencies were changed multiple times an hour to frustrate anyone attempting to listen in. Trust became the ultimate currency in this deadly game of electronic hide and fatal seek. If trapped in a ruined city, would you trust a faceless voice on the radio with your precious life? Thousands of young, brave men did exactly that, following blindly the static-filled instructions. The anonymous broadcasters became legends, their identities fiercely and strictly protected. They were the phantom orchestrators of a fierce, violent symphony of urban destruction. A simple musical tone played before a broadcast signified a shift in military strategy. The enemy often listened in amusement, unaware that their doom was currently being planned. By the mid-80s, the secret radio network had become the nervous system of the resistance. It allowed independent factions to coordinate attacks with precise and deadly, lethal timing. A convoy could be ambushed by 3 different groups who never even met face-to-face in their whole lives. Historical records show that traditional armies struggled to comprehend this ghost-like threat. They were fighting a foe that materialized from the rubble and melted back into the shadows. The only evidence left behind was the faint, lingering echo of a disconnected frequency. This elusive tactic necessitated a massive shift in intelligence gathering methods. If the fighters could not be caught on the city street, they had to be hounded in the hidden airwaves. Powerful radar jammers were deployed around to drown out the rebel signals with heavy white noise. But the underground operators simply switched to narrow bandwidths to easily pierce the jamming. It became a ruthless cat-and-mouse deadly game, played entirely in the realm of electronics. Whoever controlled the vital flow of information held keys to ultimate victory or defeat. The invisible war was escalating fast, pushing technology to its absolute limits. And so the battleground shifted from the ruined streets to the cold, sterile rooms of secret intelligence. The opposing forces mobilized all the most advanced signals intelligence agencies around. Gigantic radar dishes scanned the desert skies, eager to swallow any stray secret transmissions. In secret facilities, analysts sat under pale lights, listening to endless hours of static noise. They scrutinized every syllable, every pause, attempting to decipher the enemy codes. Giant reel-to-reel tape machines spun endlessly, recording the ghosts of the airwaves for analysis. Voice recognition software was in its infancy, making human intuition highly crucial then. Imagine fighting a foe you can only hear. How do you destroy a shadow living just in sound? These tired decoders carried the mighty weight of thousands of lives on their weary shoulders every day. They searched for hidden patterns in the sheer madness, mathematical proofs inside the random noise. A major breakthrough in decryption could prevent a deadly bombing or expose a secret hideout. But the underground network adapted once again, employing complex ciphers and many false signals. They purposely broadcast fake intelligence to draw investigators down a useless dead-end path. This psychological warfare drained the analysts, blurring the line between the obvious truth and lies. According to declassified records, Many posts were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the signals. Supercomputers of the era processed data, flashing green text across the glowing dark monitors. It was a silent clash of pure intellect then, a chess match played across invisible frequencies. Sometimes, a captured rebel radio provided a brief window into their dark methodology. Even then, the codes were steeped in local dialects, making a clear translation nearly impossible. The opposing forces poured millions into new tech, desperate to silence the elusive phantom voice. Yet despite the massive investment, the underground broadcasts continued to penetrate the pitch-black dark. The ability to communicate securely had become the most valuable asset in the war. The fighters on the ground knew nothing of the intense mathematical battles occurring above them. They only knew that when the radio hissed aloud, they had to move swiftly and strike without hesitance. The intelligence agencies eventually realized the true scale of this massive, complex threat.
We need confirmation on the ground.
They were no longer dealing with isolated troops, but a fearsome, highly organized battle machine. The concept of a centralized command had evolved into a decentralized phantom network online. The weary codebreakers were forced to admit that this invisible rebellion was truly here to stay. This was the end of traditional combat, and the birth of a relentless electronic war. The success of the Lebanese model became a brilliant blueprint for future resistance anywhere. The invisible lines of communication soon began to stretch far beyond the shattered city. A secret axis began to form, drawing power from the shadows of multiple nations. Strategic commanders stood before glowing maps, watching the secret network expand across borders. Tehran, Damascus, and Beirut were now securely linked by an unbreakable chain of secret signals. This unseen alliance was not written on paper. It was cemented through encrypted frequencies. As the world stumbled forward into the 90s, the nature of global power faced a massive shift. Traditional superpowers relied on vast nuclear arsenals to maintain strict fear and control. But this new underground coalition possessed a different kind of devastating influence around. They could mobilize thousands of mighty fighters with only a battery-powered transmitter. The axis of resistance was no longer just an idea. It was a fully functioning machine. The intelligence operators watched the map light up with interconnected glowing signal lines. This web of communication effectively bypassed the traditional global superpowers. In the new era of the 90s, the mighty threat of nuclear annihilation cast a shadow. However, these underground commanders clearly knew absolute power resided in unseen data. A local conflict mutated into a highly synchronized transnational military force. What started as a desperate defense mechanism became the fearsome, aggressive strategic weapon. They built a fortress without walls, relying on the constant and unending flow of information. This unseen alliance strongly challenged all of the old political boundaries of the Middle East. Western agencies struggled to defeat an enemy they could not easily predict or uncover. A single transmission could now coordinate deadly simultaneous operations in 3 countries. Underground operators were no longer just survivors. They were the mighty architects of destiny. Millions of dollars spent on advanced radar systems were defeated by simple analog radios. It was a testament to human ingenuity in the darkest and most desperate of times. The old world order was crumbling, replaced by a massive, complex network of invisible rebel signals. Historians look back at this exact period as the birth of modern asymmetrical warfare. From a dusty basement in Beirut, a powerful, phantom army had firmly conquered the above air. The dominoes had fallen, and the new global map would never be drawn the exact same way again. The resistance axis was born from hidden frequencies, but we must ask a very difficult question now. Did this network empower the oppressed, or plunge the realm into endless war? Share your own thoughts down below. If you enjoyed this history dive, please like the video, share, and subscribe to our channel for much more.